to those people that have lived with their lands for generation after generation, who have built these intimate relationships, who know the names, not just the names of every plant, but like what they do and how they feel and like how they grow, and all of the relationships that make up the ecosystem that those people are part of. In comparison, what I feel is nothing. It's nothing. It's completely inconsequential. And yet, in this society, I am one of the people that feels the most deeply connected to nature out of the people that I interact with and I meet. And that terrifies me. There is so much work to be done there. So much work. And like the importance of like valuing that as work, going out into natural spaces and spending time there and just being there, learning the names of plants, learning what they do. This is a lifetime of work. This is generations of work. You know, it took generations for them to take that knowledge away from us, and it will take generations for us to rebuild it. But it is so important. It's so important, and it feels so good when you see a plant that you didn't used to know the name of, and now you're like, oh, I know your name and I know what you can be used for. Like whether it's a dandelion or like plantains, the little things that you get. Yeah, there's like stuff in this grass right now, right? That you can. There you go. You know, there's stuff around us which has healing properties, which can be used for different things, which you can eat, which you can, and that it's so joyful, that relationship when you put the time into it. But yeah, I think I just really wanted to raise that point of like even those among us that in the society know that we are part of nature, which is actually like a really small minority in a lot of ways, to actually like have that as like a concept of like, yes, humans are part of nature, we're not separate from it, and that separation is what allows, you know, these kind of neo-colonial practices of conservation, this kind of like eco-fascist idea of being able to put a militarized wall around nature and protect it, and have that funded by fossil fuels and Coca-Cola and all these other funders of WWF. And how far away we are from feeling what we need to feel to really heal this planet, and like, and it's not easy feeling that connection. There's a lot of grief there as well. There's a lot of people here who've either visited or spent time on the HS2 campaign. Those are beautiful, creative spaces of healing and connection and power, and also like difficult places where we struggle through conflict and we like mess it up all the time, and we different views, and everyone argues, but like it's all those things. But also, you know, you watch a tree fall and you know that all over the world in that moment there are like thousands of trees falling. You know that there are whole forests on fire. You know that there are underwater beautiful forest ecosystems being destroyed by a trawler, and you hear that tree fall, and that crack, that death is so deep and so raw, and that grief is like few other things I've ever experienced. And actually Swan mentioned it, of like when someone had said of like how it feels when you see those tanks go by, and that raw, like you feel it, you can feel the destruction and the connection between here and all over the world, and how we have a similar sense of that when sometimes on the HS2 campaign, very different struggle, but all of our struggles are connected, right? So like that sense of this tree falls and so many trees falls, this tank drives by and so many tanks drive and murder people. Like all of that connection, all of that struggle brings a lot of grief, but it can also bring so much joy. And like the occupation that we did the other week was so healing and so powerful, because I was surrounded by all of these beautiful young people. It's completely led, driven, designed, enacted solely by young people, and it was so healing to be there with these people who really, really, really believe in what they're doing and want to build these relationships with these frontline communities, who want to value their knowledge and their experience, and want to do that work on themselves, to connect with nature, to unlearn the systemic oppression which blocks us from connecting to each other, who want to laugh and play and cry and all of these wonderful things together. And I'm really, really grateful for the whole team of people and all of the work that they put in. I did just like rock up at the last minute, like, come on kids, let's go in my van, woo! It was great. Yeah, and like also to share journeys with other activists. I'm sure a lot of you here have similar experiences of where you do something with people and then you maybe don't see each other for a year or so, and then you come back together and then you're like, oh my god, we've been on these sick journeys and we're growing and we're learning and we're putting down roots and we're building connections, and that is such a good feeling. And I'm so happy to call these people my comrades, and I'm so happy to call all of you my comrades, and for me that word comes from a place of deep love and deep connection, and that is that I know that I will stand with those people whatever comes, and that we will resist and we will continue resisting, and it will be fun.
Oh, that was an award-winning speech. That was beautiful. Oh, if I can follow up. No, maybe just I just wanted to say one last quick point about like climate justice in like the context of conservation and like what solidarity means. Like, I think it's good to be aware of how, for example, the climate crisis is disproportionately impacting communities in the global south, but also in terms of class communities here in the UK, and how, you know, the crisis is amplifying the socio-economic stratification of our society. That's good, but what does it mean in practice? For example, in context of conservation, it means realizing that the funding that goes to WWF that legitimizes and is complicit in the human rights abuse WWF is carrying out, the funding comes from us. The funding comes from people that they want to do. From me, I'm the only one funding. So where the funding is coming from, and that especially when we do, you know, actions, when, you know, the climate movement rise up and says enough with deforestation, we want our government to do better. That's okay, but we need to understand that by just saying that could just lead to, you know, carbon offsetting, and without doing a lecture on carbon markets and all the jazz. But, you know, just saying to the UK government, for example, you need to do more, it's not enough, because to do more, they could be like, okay, that's fine, let's pay the Kenyan government or WWF Kenya to plant a fuckload tree somewhere so we can still emit as much as we want and offset, you know, our emissions somewhere else, so we can still, you know, invest in fossil fuel. But, you know, the whole carbon neutrality, that's bullshit. The whole concept of carbon neutrality, it's fucked, because as we're saying, you know, we're working with partners that are, you know, on the phone telling us, look, these new plans that the UK government or the EU WWF is carrying out in our countries is destroying our lives. So I think we have a responsibility, especially in the UK, that we have, for example, in countries like Kenya, you know, Kenya was a British colony, you know, like, because of, for example, the countries like the UK and their colonial past, and their, you know, there's still imperialism that is still very much present at this moment. We have a responsibility to ask for more, and also to build, you know, personal and strong relationship with communities. So this idea of like translocal solidarity, which goes beyond, you know, amplifying voices. It means, you know, solidarity, I have no idea what it is, but it sounds to me very fucking complex and complicated, and I don't get it. But something tells me that it's a lifelong commitment. It's beyond, you know, a workshop. It's beyond an action. It's beyond platforming on your social media what's happening in Tanzania, for example. It's building, taking years to build relationships and personal connections at a very human level. Like with the people that I'm working with in East Africa, it's like friends. I'm going down for a few months in January. It's like literally just visiting a friend, and to sue the UNESCO, but that's another. Yeah. So yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. WWF also is really one more thing. They used to get lots of money from Shell and BP. And it's really funny because there's a conservative MP, a Tory, that criticised the action, the occupation of the day, but he used to work for Shell. So he was like, oh, I used to work for WWF, they're great, and then obviously the press called him out because he did work for WWF, but like a lot of board members, he used to work for Shell. So WWF board members are, since the 60s, since the beginning of the organizations, have hands all over the place. You know, the corporate affiliations of WWF are insane. I mean, we're talking about Coca-Cola that have fucked water security and still fuck water security in, you know, countries like India. There is a lot of people that used to work for mining companies that start working for WWF. BP and Shell in 2013 gave a fuckload of money to WWF to get basically reports on like what areas they could like put their hands on, but they're the good guys, you know, because they were a fucking cuddly panda logo. But yeah, it has been an interesting experience to see, to negotiate with them, but also to speak to the public and mothers and parents that have emailed us in shock saying, I bought a donation to my son, did a day to WWF, and I've read about the occupation, the campaign, and, you know, thanking us. Obviously that's not the point, but, you know, saying I wasn't aware, it was a shock for my kids as well. But so for example, on our website we say defund WWF, and then we've got a way to fund directly community-led conservation, so fund the work that our partners are doing on the ground. So if you want to check our website out, beyond the funding, but community-led conservation is the solution. It works better. So it's not just about human rights, it's about actually like basically supporting the people that are most equipped to tackle the climate crisis. Yeah.
Can we do something about 30 by 30?
Oh yeah, very important. So the action happen now because there is a big conference happening in Marseille now, where world leaders are discussing what's going to be discussed also at the next Biodiversity Summit, which is 30 by 30 initiative. What does it mean? Anyone? 30 by 30? We've got a prizes for whoever guesses right. No. 2030. You won something special. I'll give it to you later. So yeah, so the world leaders will agree at the next Biodiversity Summit on this initiative, which is like turning 30% of the world in protected areas by 2030. And so there are assessments that basically have evaluated that about 300 million people, mostly local communities and indigenous people, will lose their homes as a result of this initiative. So, and this is a result of a lot of people here in the global north to say, okay, let's do something, you know, let's tackle the climate crisis. But I think the whole truth is much bigger than that, as I was saying earlier. So now more than ever we have to say, okay, 30 by 30, no thank you. We want something better, because, you know, 30 by 30 will lead to like the destruction of millions of people's per homes, and that's not nice.
That wrong
Not nice.
And it's like grounded in that disconnection from nature, this idea that for nature to be good it must be separate from humans. And again, that I'm going to say that quote, the one statistic that I have managed to hold in my brain is 5% of the population look after and maintain 80% of terrestrial biodiversity. So this idea that we need to kick people out in order to conserve nature is just like completely illogical and does not follow the evidence. So that, you know, conservation science claims that it follows the evidence and it's grounded in science, but like what you were saying earlier, like there's no such thing as being apolitical. And when science, including conservation science, claims to be neutral, it is actually reinforcing the status quo, and it is grounded in Western ideologies that are very disconnected and very like materialist and separate, and that fundamental one of humans separate from nature. There's also like theories around like the interwoven forces of domination that affect the earth, and kind of that they can be put into three key main categories that reinforce each other. You have the domination of human over nature, you have the domination of man over woman, and you have the domination of human over human. And if we aren't tackling all of these forces of domination simultaneously, we will not win, because they reinforce each other and they come back round. In the same way that we cannot separate our struggles against the patriarchy, the nation state, capitalism, and all the other interlocking forces of oppression, like white supremacy and all these other things. If we cannot fight them individually, we need to be able to identify them as a unified struggle, and that unified struggle is for liberation, and therefore against domination. And again, that can be grounded. We can ground ourselves in our relationship to nature and try and unlearn that fundamental domination of human over nature, and that will enable us to resist domination and struggle for liberation in all of the other areas that we need to be unifying, and we need to be working together.